most of the things on my feed and my timelines that were shared by people who I'm quite close to was quite hurtful to see. And after speaking to, other people, they've experienced similar things. So that's kind of what I wanted to tackle in these pieces. There we go. So here is the triptych. So it's a bit blurry unless you zoom in. So it's very much it's a digital art piece with like the own Facebook feed, and everything on here is things that have actually been said and online that I've seen. None of these are made up. This one in particular was published by my nan, who had an earful when she posted that by me. The original news feed is here. Just really shocking statements that I thought really need to be tackled. It can't be brushed by. What you say online is there forever, and I don't think people necessarily realise that. So that's my past. And the present is this image is from the Birmingham protest, and I thought it was just, such a powerful image. It really pulled my heartstrings. So then the future is, I think everybody here agrees that we want justice, we want equality in the future. So I wanted to focus more so specifically on how that should be done, in my opinion. For example, I think the BAME community deserve an apology for what has been said online. So yes, this is also from a conversation I've had with a family member. So originally I wanted to do the animation, but it didn't quite go as to plan, not the way I really intended. But I think that's been a growing experience itself, because it's really made me realise that there are going to be complications I wasn't quite prepared for. Yeah. So those aren't the apologies that I think the community deserve. Thanks.
Brilliant. What was it that you wanted in your animation that you didn't have? Because I can't, obviously this is the first time we've seen it, so I can't see faults.
So what? Unless it's me nitpicking, unless you zoom in, it appears blurry.
Oh, right, okay.
So I think if it was displayed in person, it would need to be blown up to a large scale, which, is a powerful message in itself, having it on a large scale. So it could work in my favour. I think that's just the perfectionist in me just bothered by it. But it was a growing experience. I haven't really experimented with animation before. So that was also quite interesting to do.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
It's fantastic. Thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, brilliant.
Really lovely.
And I know through this experience as well, it's been very personal because, you have been fighting and toing and froing, and it's emotionally draining when this happens. So to come out with such a poignant piece that directly speaks to those who have been confronting is really brave. So well done.
Thanks.
And thank you.
So this is my digital piece. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that, I'm doing a digital piece. I think the main subject revolving around my piece, other than the whole racism part, is also manipulation. And this is the past where, you know, people have been told lies and just band-aid on bone deep wounds, you know, and things that are just like temporary fixes. And these are like, I think mainly um, the politicians and the people who actually run the country. You know, what I feel is that I don't think that putting a few racists inside a jail is going to, you know, stop racism entirely. And that's not actually justice. It's just, you know, stalling for another crime to happen, for it to, you know, become another thing. And we're like in this vicious cycle of going through the same thing over and over again and just being given temporary fixes. This is my present piece, and I have kind of added stuff that have been told to me, as well as things that I have heard people say as a third person point of view. You know, this piece is kind of called Weeping Justice because it's kind of ironic. I think this one is just mainly stating the obvious. You know, people just, they know what they're saying to you. You know, all of these racist people, they know what they're saying. They know the intention behind it, and still they do it. And I mean, to be honest, I don't see any point in racism because it does not benefit anybody. It does not benefit the racist or the victim in any way. It does not benefit even the society in any way, you know. And I think racism is one of the most pointless things on this planet. So this is my last piece, and this is a quote from Shakespeare, Shakespeare's famous comedy, As You Like It. And I just changed the name from Horatio to racists over here. And I've used belladonna flower, which is a deadly nightshade, because during the Renaissance, women used to take eye drops of belladonna and put it in their eyes to dilate their pupils to make them look more erotic. But at the same time, they used to end up slowly poisoning themselves and then die eventually. And I think that's what, you know, racism is like, because it's not just you hurting a colored person, you're hurting yourself and slowly intoxicating your whole mind and your body and killing your humanity over time, you know. And if you're a racist with a family and children, you're killing your children's humanity and raising them to be racist. And, you know, I just hope that they actually do turn out to be the opposite of racist and turn out to be anti-racist. But, you know, I just think that it's a very relatable quote, and I think it fits in this situation entirely. Yeah, that's it.
Do you want to stop screen share?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or do you want to talk over? Yeah.
How do I stop it?
You just, if you go to the top of the screen, it should have stop share.
Oh, got it.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. It's a really clever use of that quote to adapt it slightly. And I think, you know, as you've been creating the work, you've heard songs and things that have kind of like just come to you at the right time. So I think it's lovely that you've used a part of a verse to as your future piece.
Thank you.
How has this process felt to you?
Well, it was very taxing, mind and body, to be honest. Uh, because, like I said, I don't see the point in racism. There is literally no reason to be racist, and it got me thinking a lot. It got me experimenting a lot. I've never ever done a digital piece in my life, and this is literally the first digital piece that I've done. So I've actually pushed boundaries, to make this happen, because I was going to make it as a collage, but it felt a little effortless, and I wanted to put in the effort. So I just thought that I would do everything by hand, um, and it taught me patience, I think, mostly, and endurance, I think.
Do you think that the media that you chose was influenced by, I mean, you've been in, you're in Dubai now, you were in Worcester, you've moved house, you've had lockdown as well, whilst you've been creating. Do you think that that's also influenced how you've chosen to deliver it?
To be honest, I actually bought canvases. I bought canvases just specifically for all of this. But and I bought canvases back in Worcester as well, thinking that I'd finish it by then, but I did not. And I think that it did influence it, I think, because if I were in Worcester, I wouldn't have had my mom's laptop that I used. And her laptop's way better than mine, and it just gave me this option. So it's like, I might as well just try it, because if I'm making it a collage, I can just print it out and just do a little bit of paint here and there, and it'll be done. So why not just try something that will push me and give me knowledge just as much as express what I'm feeling.
Excellent. I also find it really interesting because it's, when I make things personally, when I make things by hand, I find that I feel like I'm expressing myself more because I made it by hand. But with the pieces that you've created, they're really striking and really bold. And I'm learning from you, like, this can be achieved in a digital format. In fact, I just need to kind of overcome those challenges that are technical. So it's brilliant that during lockdown and during this period, it's really like helped you to kind of adjust your way of working and to think outside of the box. So great work.
It's the best. I painted 2 colored hand with chain. Because in the past, black people were lived on as slaves. People don't think that we could be anything more, and that chain symbolizes slavery. So background, I just in the painting process to do so yeah. And my present is like this, and where also is 2 colored hands, and around the hands is worms who symbolize people who discriminate colored people, and I in there wanted to do light, but for me more looks like a fire. But I think that's even more better because I think then people discriminate others, that people think feels like in the hell. So, and my last piece is one hand color people are white people, and that means friendship in everyone, kind with everyone, and that means friendship in everyone, kind with everyone, and peaceful. Yes.
How has making this work made you feel, like, emotionally, like doing research and development? How has that felt the more you grow? How have your opinions changed and your feelings towards the cause? How has it made you feel personally?
I was in some where shared somehow people behave with colored people was a little bit shocked because was didn't know about that, and yeah, it's sad that happened in world in 21st century.
I've written out the music for Ebony and Ivory living together in perfect harmony. Why don't we live side by side? And on the main notes of harmony, I've made these heads, which are made out of papier-mâché, and they're different colours and different hairstyles. So they've all got faces on them. I'll try and pick some up. So those are the different faces. Now my favourite one, which I did right at the end, and I would like to explore this a bit more, is a multicoloured one. Because I would have liked to sort of do one that's a bit like the world on people's faces. And I often use music because I think music's very, it connects people. Yeah. I think it's often a message, a feeling, not even just a message in music, but a feeling in music that people get within themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, I use music as well. Even if I don't go out with a that being my intention, it always seems to connect in some way to a song, or I'll end up with an earwork creating a piece. So I can relate to that.
So do I. I do a lot of my work listening to different music. I love making them as well, because while making them, I covered them in crepe paper, which is very reminded me of skin, because it's layers. and it's very delicate layers as well. And then I moulded it into the shapes. So I quite like the whole hands-on actually moulding the shapes. And I thought it would be really lovely to get children to do it.
Yes.
Make these faces and get this feeling, and then you colour them. And I've coloured bits of string for the hair, I've got bits of wool, and you could use anything for the hair and things like that. And I thought that would be quite nice.
Yeah, it's a lovely idea to workshop, actually.
So yeah, that's it.
Brilliant.
So the main message that I wanted to sort of convey in my pieces was an idea of growth, so sort of growing, developing and changing attitudes. So between past, present and future, how we as a society have developed, changed and, grown in understanding about these subjects and sort of become better. We're not quite there yet, but how we as a society are changing our view towards racism. The main sort of focus of my piece is through florography, which is something which I researched and was first sort of used in the 1800s, and it's kind of the unspoken messages of flowers and the symbolism behind them, which fitted into this idea of growing, this idea of kind of developing. So I wanted to sort of research what all those sort of flowers meant and then kind of reference past, present and future through those. The idea of using florography, it was used in the Victorian times as a way of passing sort of messages throughout actually speaking them. And for me, it was quite a poignant message, sort of about silent dialogue being a symbol. So when, the slave trade was very prominent, I feel like there was sort of a loss of power from people who were made to go into the slave trade against their will. There was sort of a loss of power, a loss of voice, and that's where kind of that symbolic saying things without actually saying them comes from, and sort of still having those opinions and wanting to express them in a way which you can. So obviously that's symbolic from the past, because obviously people weren't given the right to speak for themselves and decide for themselves at some point, which is really wrong. And then in the present, I feel like, when there were all the protests, there are a lot of people who wanted to put people down, say, oh, you shouldn't go to these protests, you shouldn't be having these opinions, now isn't the time, now isn't the, the environment in which to express those views. And I think that people did use that as an excuse, some people who didn't want to hear it, who didn't want to tackle a difficult situation. So it's also sort of saying that, no, this is relevant and people aren't going to be silenced anymore. It isn't going to be pushed to the back and made to feel irrelevant because of whatever else is going on in the world. Like, yes, we're in a pandemic, but racism is still going on and it needs to be tackled. So yeah, mainly that's why I used the flowers, because I feel like lockdown as well has been a particular period of growth for a lot of people. I found that personally I've grown a lot in my beliefs, and I think a lot of people have as well, like I've seen on social media, and obviously through being part of this group, I think that everyone's really developed as artists and also as people. And I think that's what I really wanted to show in this, especially with the colour scheme that I've used. So obviously in my past, I've shown it as being quite dark. A lot of the flowers are kind of dying. And I feel like it is quite seasonal, the approach that I've taken from sort of a sense of rebirth, really. So from the past to the future, new ideas, new ways of thinking and new ways of being will hopefully develop, which is what I wanted to show, really. So yeah.
Brilliant. Did you have any work to hold up to show us, or is it all kind of?
Yeah, because it's sort of all done quite 3D. It's quite delicate at the moment, so I can't hold it up. But I have got some videos which I've already done, but I need to figure out how to send those, so I will do that.
Okay, fantastic. That's brilliant. What have you learnt in the process?
Yeah, so I feel like I've learned a lot about myself during this process, my beliefs, sort of when all the protests started happening, I sort of made it my responsibility to go and research, to know what I was talking about, to know what was going on in the world. And I think that, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about the sort of people that I want to be around. I found that when everything sort of happened at the beginning of lockdown, there were a lot of people with an opinion, some people with what I would consider maybe not the right opinion. And I think it's been really interesting about sort of having discussions with people who might have opposing views and learning how to do that in a constructive way. I think I've learned a lot about how if someone doesn't have the same view as you, sometimes you can't approach it in a really defensive way. And it's sort of learning how to actually put across my perspective in a way that's actually constructive and is going to help somebody maybe change their views. So yeah, I've learned a lot about that, and I've also learned a lot about the sort of things that I want to endorse. So on social media particularly, I noticed that like a number of brands were using mainly white women, stereotypical white women for all of their branding. You know, there was no diversity, there was no showing that there are plenty of, you know, women on this earth of all different shapes, sizes, colours, and I think that's really important. So a lot of my process has been kind of learning about what sort of brands I want to support and the message that they're giving as well. That's been really important to me.
And how's the process you've gone through, how's that changed your approach to your practice and sort of like your future work? Has it changed it?
So when I was starting this out, I actually went through quite a lot of changes to my piece. I sort of started off thinking I'd be doing one thing, and then I switched to another, and I've actually focused on a style now. I feel like it has helped me to develop my personal style. I feel like I had struggled in the past with what actually I liked to create, what was working for me. I've worked with lots of different mixed media and things like that, and it has helped me to decide what I enjoy doing, what works for me, and different techniques. So a lot of my piece is made using natural materials or things that have been recycled, and I feel like that is something that I'm really interested in, sort of getting things that people might not necessarily want, might not necessarily use anymore, but actually making them into something really beautiful rather than just sort of chucking them away. And then obviously botanical drawing is something which I hadn't really done up until now. It's very experimented a little bit with it at university, but I definitely want to try and develop that more. And I found a couple of courses, so I think I'm going to try and do those online.
Brilliant.
But yeah, and also just one more thing, it's sort of the sort of subjects that I want to tackle, because before I've done sort of art just because it looks pretty, and actually I found it really emotionally cathartic to do work based on current events, based on things that I feel really strongly about. So I think that in future I'm going to definitely try and do art based on things, my feelings, my emotions, and things that are going on that are really important in the world, because I feel that, you know, it's a really good way of actually coping, getting your message out there and sort of expressing how you feel.
You've explained everything so brilliantly, but what I really love about your work is that it feels like it's something that's in your home. It's something that feels very close and it's familiar, and the past, present and future and how it reads, it's like it's always been there, it's underlying. And yeah, there's sort of something very striking and thought-provoking about what you've done, and just watching you speak and how kind of like, no, we need to do the work, and how you're going to use your art to express your, you know, views politically and emotionally. I think that we need more of that. So it's fantastic. I'm like super proud of you, man.
Thank you.
It's really, really great. It's
Thanks.
really brilliant.
All right. So what I wanted to do after talking to Yasmin about it, I wanted to do a few self-portraits, sort of like a yearbook, American yearbook style, where I'd have like quotes under each of my pictures of things that have been told to me and things I've thought about myself, just like growing up as an Iranian immigrant in America. And this one's my past. This was right after 9/11 happened. So like tensions were pretty high towards anyone from the Middle East. So that wasn't the greatest time to live through. And then this is my present one. I basically just crossed out the years and just like made it current, and then just wrote like current quotes. And what I wanted to really focus on is how my expression changed throughout these past, present, and future. So for present, you can see I'm already starting to get tired, but I'm sort of like used to all these quotes and just casual racism, I guess you could call it. And then for future, you could see where I'm like just like broken down and just really tired of the whole thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Pedro. How's the process kind of changed your approach to your practice and future work?
It's just made me more like aware of like the impact of some of the messages I portray in my work, like what words I can and can't use, and like just how I present everything. I just have to be more mindful of that kind of thing.
Okay. Has anything changed regarding your opinions or views of the Black Lives Matters movement?
Not really. I've always been in support of it, and this whole project just made me realize how much more important the whole movement is. Like, you got to give those voices to the people who don't have the voices, or they're not being heard. So,
Brilliant. What was your experience of being mentored by professional artists in a professional context?
it was lovely. Like, you guys, I wanted to thank you guys for all your like time and help throughout this whole thing. Like, you guys were straight to the point and just like had everything planned out for us and laid out perfectly. So like, I wasn't lost throughout this entire thing. So that was great.
Good. Brilliant. Anything you wanted to say, Yasmin, or ask?
Working with you, Pedro, throughout this, I think has been quite a learning curve, because I remember when we were having conversations like, this is also about you. You are a person of colour, so this is your subject, this is your voice that needs to be heard. And like you were saying, throughout it, the realization that these casual racism and microaggressions were happening, I realize I've been through the same. It's like it starts kind of like the pennies dropping, and you feel like, okay, this isn't just other people's voices, this is my voice too. And then also having some like feelings of like guilt about it, because we understand our privilege as well within the Black Lives Matter movement. So it's been a very, and you said the mentoring, this has been a really interesting learning curve for me as well, and quite warming to know that that there are other people in this that are in a similar boat to me. Mm-hmm. But your piece of work, I think, is really striking in the way that you have you as a child, and then the yearbook is defaced, which is such a symbol of bullying. That kind of scrawls on the toilet wall, or somebody's, their yearbook has been defaced by somebody who dislikes them. That's that's the thing that happens. And yeah, so it really stands out. And then as an adult, that this is continuing, the bullying continues through to adulthood. Mm-hmm. I think it's a very interesting perspective, because to say that the future is going to be rosy, this utopian society, I think we need to maybe not there is no rose tinted glasses here. We can try for it, but as our experience, you're in your 20s, I'm in your 40s, and then we have, elderly people in, supporting the Black Lives Matter, and people that were here that came over with Windrush who are still experiencing it. Mm-hmm. So it's really, it's very real. And, it's really also really brave to share that. So thank you. And
thank you for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting. I'm really can't wait for the public to see it.
Thank you.
So for my work, I was kind of looking into erasure and whitewashing, and I titled my work Acknowledgement and Solidarity, and I particularly looked into the LGBT community and how people of colour are actually really integrated within the community. So trying to find my words. So for the word acknowledgement, I find throughout science, history, inventions, there's always been a factor of whitewashing. You never really know. You always know the white faces of who made stuff or who invented stuff, but you never really hear people of colour who have done lots and lots of stuff for human development. And I particularly looked into the LGBT community because Pride started as a riot by a person of colour who was, a black transsexual drag queen, which is such a big statement. So for my past, I used Marsha P, who really, really made way for our future, really. And I also use the flag with brown and black, because when I first saw that flag, I did not know what it meant. So a big part of the research was really understanding why people of colour are so important to the LGBT community. For present, I kind of use this portrait and of someone we'd kind of see today, really. I decided not really to give a identity to the person, rather than a symbol of femininity. So what I mean by that is it could be a transgender person, it could be a drag queen, it could be just a black woman, because a lot of people in the LGBT community who are, PARC have the highest, death rates. Like transgender women who are black, they do not get much help from the police. The death rates are high. There's always been a problem within the community where, yes, everyone gets discriminated, but the discrimination people of colour is significant and it's noticeable. And I really wanted to basically get the message across that being a person of colour is bad in our society, it's dangerous, and then also being someone from the LGBT community increases the danger, which is very scary that this still happens today. For future, I kind of wanted to I feel like we are going this direction. It's just obviously I think it's more the justice system and racist and homophobic people, but I do feel like in the media we are getting more coverage and more acknowledgement of what's really going on and how Pride actually started. And I kind of drew, as you see, she sort of has the stage, you have the cameras, the mic, so the voices are heard, which it's kind of like, I do feel like we're hopefully going that direction, but it'd be really nice to see that pushed even more. I also did a oil piece, and this was kind of, with the experimentation, really looking at the flag and the colours and kind of moving them around into something more like a different kind of visualization. And I kind of use a body as the idea of a vessel, and things coming out the vessel, and I used a black background as like, you know, I've never really painted on a sort of black background before, and that's kind of also taking the colours from the flag and just sort of rearranging it. So I'm pretty happy with this piece as well. Yeah.
Fabulous work.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's lovely. Well done. What have you learnt in this process?
I learned that as a sort of like the process of art isn't just the creation. I feel like I've done more thinking and experimentation than actually doing the visual side of things. So I felt like there's a lot of thought and behind the scene that goes behind a piece. I feel like in future I'd less jump on things. Like I'd really give a lot more thought for things, because I felt like doing this and really spending more time thinking. I wouldn't say taking my time, but also just managing my time. Okay, this amount of time I'm going to be, you know, doing my research and, you know, challenging, you know, myself, and really try and be open to everything, so I can kind of get the full picture before I, you know, create the piece.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of the project saying to everybody, you know, really need to do the work, the research, because this is not performative, and being very like about it, because it was right to be. And you've all very much, you know, done the work, and then, you know, very rightly absorbed it all and taken your time to create this piece, which is exactly what we need in protest, is to have all the information and to have like mental ammunition. So to me, in a project like this, if you spend 80% of your time researching and then 20% of your time coming up with a really fluid piece, then that's the perfect the perfect way of doing it, because when you come to explaining your work, you're then totally equipped. So in terms of like this not being a performative piece, you've really nailed it. I love how deep you've gone with it.
Thank you.
All of you.
Brilliant. It's brilliant.